Hey, soldiers, the NAACP, an organization about as relevant as a liberal arts degree, has once again demonstrated that it knows very little about the economy and that it pretty much hates black people. We're going to get into the latest from the NAACP and their anti-economic growth agenda, which is really targeting black people. With this latest statement that they have made, they've come out and made. You may have heard about it, but we're going to get into it because it's another example of one of these non-governmental organizations out there having a platform that are doing things that are actually contrary to their constituency. And we just want to bring this up as an example of why not to listen to any of this crap coming out of these organizations and how it's really designed to have the opposite effect. It's not designed to help you in any way, shape, or form, especially not economic. Now, look, guys, you may have seen the join button on the page now. Yes, we have memberships, and I'm going to tell you right now that the value of that membership is going to blow you away. I'm going to sum it up like this. It's the Netflix of financial education. All right. So you want to go over, check that out. There's a link in the description if you want to get a look at what is being offered. Now, I also want you to subscribe if you have not already. Let me know you subscribed in the comments and I will salute you. Hitting that subscribe button is tantamount to enlisting, becoming a soldier of finance. Now, everybody in the sound of my voice, hit that thumbs up. That is like magic when it comes to the algorithm. And I thank you guys, almost dropped my phone, so much for doing that. Okay, you've been doing an awesome job of that. So thank you so much. All right, the NAACP wants people to avoid Florida, one of the fastest growing states in America, for a variety of reasons, including the fact that they don't mind you protecting yourself from criminals, and also they don't hit you with onerous taxes that get even liberals fleeing blue northeastern states, heading down to Florida because the tax policies are so onerous. Those liberals, they talk a good game, but they leave poor black people up in these socialist paradises, okay? And they go to better environments in terms of weather, taxation, and crime. All right, so look, we've got the NAACP. They came out and they issued this statement. They said they're advising against travel to Florida, like they're the State Department. Okay, you know, the State Department tells you to stay out of certain areas. Well, Florida is saying, the NAACP rather is saying that they want you to stay out of Florida because it's openly hostile to blacks. Let's look at some economic statistics as they pertain to blacks in Florida. First of all, blacks are about 16% of the population in Florida. There are 250,000 black-owned businesses in Florida. This is, last time I looked, they were number 2 in terms of black business ownership in this country, all right? They employ 80,000 people and have an annual payroll combined of $2.63 billion. So the NAACP, they want you to avoid that. Just as Governor Ron Desantis is reportedly poised to announce his presidential candidacy this week, the National Association for the Advancement of Some Colored People has issued a travel advisory for Florida in response to its alleged surging racism. Now, I say some colored people because it's quite obvious that the NAACP is not an organization that advocates for the advancement of all colored people. You will not find them in parts of Africa, okay, advocating on behalf of child labor, for example, young people who are mining cobalt, okay, very laborious and dirty and unhealthy conditions. The NAACP is nowhere in sight. So maybe they should call themselves the National Association for the Advancement of Some Colored People, because they don't call themselves the National Association for the Advancement of American Colored People. Okay. They just say colored people. So Florida this is what they say. Florida is openly hostile toward African Americans That kind of flies in the face of the 250,000 black-owned businesses in Florida. But let's continue. It's openly hostile toward African Americans, people of color, and the LGBTQ plus individuals. I don't think they've ever been to Miami. Before traveling to Florida, please understand that the state of Florida devalues and marginalizes the contributions of and the challenges faced by African Americans and other communities of color. In an accompanying statement, the 114-year-old organization said the travel advisory comes in direct response to Governor Ron Desantis' aggressive attempts to erase Black history and to restrict diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in Florida schools. Derrick Johnson, that's the name of the president of the NAACP. If you decide to go to the state of Florida, please be aware of the open hostility toward African Americans and people of color. The NAACP advisory reads, in a glaring inconsistency, the NAACP did not advise Black people who live in Florida to consider moving away from the state that is so hostile toward them. Now, all those Black people that live in the state, remember we said we've got 15% of the population, 16% of the population of Florida is Black, okay? A lot of them are home owners, all right, who would suffer tremendously if people stopped, putting revenue into the state of Florida. The business owners would suffer, okay, absolutely, if people stopped coming to Florida and putting money into that economy down there. So the NAACP, once a great organization that fought for civil rights, is a shadow of itself. All right, as relevant, rather, as Helen Keller's alarm clock. I don't know. Tourism is a principal industry in the Sunshine State, accounting for 1.6 million jobs and drawing in nearly $100 billion in tourist spending in 2019. The last year data is available. Some Black Florida Democrats do not appreciate the NAACP's attack on a key economic pillar of their communities. In fact, the mayor of St. Petersburg, Florida, a gentleman by the name of Ken Welch, has this to say: we are intentional with our work to make St. Petersburg, Florida, a shining example of bridge building, collaboration, intentional equity, and respect for all. We are St. Pete means everyone is always welcome and will be treated with dignity and respect. The NAACP, now what had they condemned DeSantis for exactly? Let's look at the real reasons why they are telling people not to visit a state with 250,000 Black-owned businesses. Okay, let's get into the real reason for that. Well, they are opposed to the constitutional carry law down there. And that law actually helps Black people tremendously, unlike here in Baltimore, where if you're walking down the street at 3 a.m. because you just got off work and you had to catch a bus and, Amazon, that's your shift, and you got to walk 3 blocks now, okay, to get to your house, you're not allowed to walk around, certain places in Maryland with a gun, okay? Doesn't matter if Baltimore is crime infested. Who cares? Okay, we'll clean up the mess later. Too bad for you and your family and all those depending on you if you end up in the hospital or if you end up, worse. Okay, but Florida says, no, we're not going to play that game. They have a constitutional carry law that allows citizens to protect themselves. All right. If they feel as though they're being threatened with bodily harm, great bodily harm, I applaud that. All right. And it also incenses me each and every time I hear about any Black person who is anti-Second Amendment in any way, because we've been over this before. The Second Amendment was deprived. Black people were deprived of having that amendment or that right afforded to them back during slavery and Jim Crow. Right. The Wall Street Journal did a big write-up on it. And you have to understand that those institutions, slavery and Jim Crow, were certainly perpetuated by the fact that Blacks were not allowed to defend themselves, okay, to protect their lives and property. Now, We saw what happened in Haiti when Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines got their hands on some guns. They actually ended slavery on the island and expelled Napoleon's army. Okay. So that could have happened here if we had access, if blacks had access to guns, because there were plenty of white people like John Brown who were like, hey, look, let's get this thing on. Let's take it to them and end this scourge. But, it took a civil war where it's operative word war. Okay, so you didn't have diplomacy in slavery. You had people take up arms, most of them white, that conflict was decided by force of arms. And I know, you don't need to go into it. I know that there are economics behind why we got into that war. I'm well aware of the fact that Lincoln said, if I could preserve the institution of slavery and the country, I'm paraphrasing, that he said he'd do so. Okay, so it wasn't an act of benevolence. It was an act of economic expediency, all right, for the new country, relatively new country. Another thing, so, they're upset that they've got constitutional carry, as if we're still in the Jim Crow times and they're saying that blacks can't be afforded this right. Okay. Remember all those Democrats like Orville Farbus and, those types of guys who supported that? Even, what's his name? Al Gore Sr., the father, okay, who actually supported segregation. Well, no, Florida's saying no, everybody's going to, law-abiding citizens are going to have this right. The NAACP is upset about it. Next, prompting the College Board to overhaul its AP course in African American Studies to include removing critical race theory content and adding black conservatism as a potential research project. All I'll say about critical race theory is it was invented by a white person, a liberal white person who is hell-bent on division and looks at black people in a condescending manner, all right? As if we can't succeed, all right? And that nothing could be further from the truth. Defunding diversity and equity and inclusion programs at state public colleges. Listen, whether people want to believe it or not, this earth is a meritocracy on many, many levels, especially for those of us in the middle class, all right? I don't have a famous father or a powerful uncle that has helped me get anything. Although there have been people who have helped me. I'm not saying that has not been the case. But by and large, if you're in the middle class, it's a meritocracy. So when you go off to college and you think you're going to become a doctor and you want to, start that pre-med track, guess what? If you can't do mathematics because you went to a public school that was more concerned with diversity and inclusion or drag queen story hour, okay, and they tied up your school time with that instead of the mathematics you need to become a surgeon, well, guess what? Some remedial instruction is in order and you might not be able to go to a state college immediately. You might need to go to a community college, or guess what? Being a doctor just might not be in the cards for you. And that is brass tacks, because when I lay down on an operating table, I don't care what color the person is. I don't care what sexuality they prefer or who they sleep with. All I'm concerned about is whether or not they know what the hell they are doing. So I want to see merit. Okay. Yes, I want diversity and inclusion and all that crap. It's time wasting stuff. If you want to do something on an extracurricular basis about that, then fine, do it. But it is wrong to restrict Asians who have high test scores from getting into certain schools because there's a quota. All right. That's just absolutely wrong. And furthermore, when it comes to these collegiate concerns, you actually handicap people if you promote them into an environment that is too competitive for them at a certain point in time. Maybe there's more cultivation that's needed. I've got a good friend, a brother, who was not able to go to 4-year college with us immediately because the scores weren't good enough. So he went to 2-year college. He didn't complain. He didn't say, my ancestors were treated in a wrong way, and so that's why I've ended up in this position. It's not fair. No, he went to a community college. He got his grades up, and then he came to 4-year college, finished up, and graduated, and is doing phenomenally well today. They instituted a multifaceted law to prevent rioting and looting. The NAACP has a problem with that. Of course, it's targeted toward blacks. So what are you saying? We're the only ones that riot and loot? And what about those black businesses? You don't want those destroyed or damaged, do you? I would think that a law that prevents rioting and looting would be okay with everyone. A law requiring convicted felons to pay off all fines, fees, and restitution before becoming eligible to vote. Critics say inability to pay will unfairly result in disenfranchisement. No. If you hit me upside the head and take my wallet and you are sentenced to a year or two in jail plus restitution, yeah, guess what? You got to make that happen before you are reinstituted into society. What is so wrong with that? So these are the gripes that the NAACP has. Let me be clear. Failing to teach an accurate representation of the horrors and inequalities that Black Americans have faced and continue to face is a disservice to students and a dereliction of duty to all. No one's saying they're not going to teach the true history of slavery. Okay, no one's suggesting that. But to use it as a crutch and to get white people to feel guilty and Black people to look at their white neighbor like, you've kept me in bondage when the white person today never owned slaves and Black people today were never slaves. It's lunacy. It's designed to distract and divide. Okay, I've never seen Oprah Winfrey and Warren Buffett, at fisticuffs. In fact, Jay-Z, known as a gangster rapper, sat down with Warren Buffett. You know what they have in common? Billions of dollars. The NAACP advisory follows others issued by the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC. I did some work with them when I was a lobbyist. They were a resource group that we worked with on a couple of projects. And Equality Florida, an LGBTQ advocacy group, responding to a law penalizing people who employ or aid illegal immigrants. Imagine that. You want citizens to work at your company here in the United States. We've got crab pickers up here that come seasonally and do work. Okay, they get special dispensation to do that annually. So there are ways that people who are not necessarily citizens can be employed in companies here in America. It's just a process. People don't want to follow a process. People just the left wants a free-for-all. Florida is a dangerous, hostile environment for law-abiding Americans and immigrants. Starting July 1, employers of 25 or more workers will have to use the E-Verify system to check employee eligibility. Imagine that, the horror, okay? So as much ado about nothing, but I wanted to bring it up, guys, because simply it's so antithetical to reason and good economic sense. They're not even caring about the constituency that they're supposed to represent. 250,000 Black-owned businesses, okay? What about all of the citizens who pay property taxes down there, okay? Who own assets down there. Lunacy. But that's where we're at as a country today. So, looks like Florida is a place where your money is treated very well, and it will continue to flow there. You will continue. I know somebody who is a raging leftist, and I know for a fact they have a house in Florida. They're not selling it. Okay. In fact, I'm going to mess with that person later on today and tell him the NAACP said he might want to get the hell out of there. In the meantime, guys, check out this video. Are we at the point of economic or a point of economic no return? Let's ham-hand it. Economic point of no return. That's the video we have up here. It's talking about the debt ceiling and where we're at with that. I can't believe you got Congress people arguing in the street over dumb stuff, yet and still we're facing default. Guys, check it out. I'll talk to you soon.